What's going on, guys? This is DaWoblefet, and welcome to a team report concerning the team I brought to the Players' Cup 4 Global Finals. I ended up finishing 1 and 2 in the Global Finals, which was 9th place, and I got $500 from that. I lost to both finalists, Leonardo Bonanomi and Renzo Navarro. Both very great opponents. I had great sets against both of them. Can't complain one bit. This was a wonderful chance for me to get to play against players from other regions in a competitive setting on kart that I don't normally get to avail myself to. So it was very, very fun to participate in Global Finals. And as you can see, I brought mostly the same team from Regional Finals to Global Finals. In the Regional Finals, I had Moltres, and in the Global Finals, I had Blastoise. I had some other EV changes as well, but let me talk you through a little bit about my thought process in between the Regional and Global Finals. So one of the most important things that occurred for me was completely outside of the game. I actually moved in between Regional and Global Finals, which necessitated a lot of time to packing my stuff up, getting moved in, dealing with all of the complications of actually changing your address, things of that nature. And so, especially I moved out the first week after Regional Finals ended, so I didn't have much time to prepare in that initial first week. Also, in general, practice was scarce. Laddering on PS wasn't very effective. Not only was Series 9 super unpopular at the time, but PS was also experiencing pretty severe ladder lag. That meant I was getting paired up against low-ranking opponents from how the ladder lag ended up I couldn't find any opponents, so I was facing against opponents that were a lot lower ranked than I was. I was hovering in the top 100. I peaked at like 24th on the ladder or so, but that's not especially impressive when there isn't very much activity on the ladder because most people were playing Series 10 because Series 10 was announced by this point. So I switched to practicing on Battle Stadium, which was the first time I've ever done this. And practicing on Battle Stadium took a lot longer in order to actually test my Pokemon. Because necessarily it just takes a little bit longer with animations than loading up a team on Showdown. There's advantages for practicing on both. The cartridge mechanics accuracy is always nice on cartridge because that's what I'm going to actually be playing in the tournament. But Showdown is close enough nowadays that there's really not a significant difference outside of timer, which is a difference. I mean, it is significant with Registeel, but I knew how to play with timer and against timer, so that wasn't a huge deal to me. General practice was scarce. So my original plan was to build a new team because in my opinion, the player who builds a new team for Players' Cup 4 with the general view of the opponent's teams that were successful in making it through in mind, I think that player is most likely to win the event. If you're able to build your new team, or at the very least adjust your new team to be more effective against what you expect to play against in Global Finals. Wolf was a good example of somebody who did that in Players' Cup 2. So I wanted to build a new team, but because of the moving time, because of the practice delays, I ended up deciding, okay, I'm just going to stick with what I know. I'm going to basically use my same team, but I do want to drop Moltres. This team had a number of threats. As you might have noticed, as I was playing through Players' Cup, the North American qualifier stage, there were a lot of things that I was weak to, and there were a lot of things that I wanted to patch matchups for, and Moltres was by far the weakest link. I used Moltres the least out of all my Pokemon. It was good when I brought it, but I felt like there could be a better option than Moltres. I felt like there was a better choice that I could make, so I was debating on the different options there. Some of the threats that I had to consider, probably biggest number one, was opposing Life Orb Landorus. I thought Landorus was the best Pokemon in the metagame. I think Landorus is the best Pokemon in Series 9. And so having a better check against it would be really nice, because Landorus can't... My own Landorus is, sketchy as a check because it just depends on who sends in their Intimidate first, who gets off a Swords Dance. It's positioning based. I've got Will-O-Wisp, which is good. I've got Redirection with Follow Me, which is good. But if an opposing Landorus gets out of control, it can be really bad. So having a Pokemon that can actually take Landorus hits and deal heavy damage back is something that's going to be really important. I thought that was going to be a critical component of the matchup. Another thing that was really tough for me in practice and also in the tournament was Urshifu when it could get a speed boost. If it got a speed boost, it would be faster than my Regieleki. It would notably be faster than my Landorus. If the Rapid Strike Urshifu was ever faster than my Landorus, I was having a bad time. So I felt that Rapid Strike Urshifu was a big problem. Tapu Fini, if my Eleki couldn't do very much to it, was a problem. Because otherwise the only thing I really have to hit it with is my Landorus. None of my other Pokemon can hit it for a lot of damage. So I felt Tapu Fini was problematic. Mamoswine I thought was problematic, and then also Glastrier to an extent as well. Mamoswine I thought was, I beat it in the qualifiers, but it was not a good matchup by any stretch of the imagination. I lucked my opponent to end up winning that set, so I wanted to have something versus Mamoswine, so I didn't just fold to it. Glastrier was kind of the same thing, same idea with Ice Ground coverage. Having a better check for Glastrier was something that I really wanted to look to, especially because of how often it was getting paired with Haze Dusclops, because my typical check to Glastrier was using my Registeel, getting an Iron Defense up, and then the Glastrier couldn't do very much damage to my Registeel, and then I would body press it out of max. But with Haze Dusclops, that's a lot less reliable. I can't just do that. I mean, it's part of the matchup for sure, but I can't just do that when it's Haze Dusclops. So these were some of the most important Pokemon that were pressuring for me. Also Colossal. Colossal with the Life Orb Dragapult, and the Colossal with Life Orb Dragapult was a big problem. We saw that I lost to it twice in Swiss, and it was both times because I wasn't using my Spectrier in order to outspeed it. I basically cheesed Marco. I beat him 2 games in a row by basically out-leading him, and then I outplayed him during the game, but my matchup wasn't good, so I wanted a better matchup versus Cole. Those were the main things that I was most concerned about. And then also, if I did drop my Moltres, I was going to be weaker to a number of other Pokemon as well. Like, my team is going to look a lot weaker to Rillaboom. I've still got my Registeel, which is good, and I've still got my Max Lando, but otherwise Rillaboom is really going to be problematic for me, especially once Lando is done with its max. That's usually when Rillaboom is most problematic, so Rillaboom is going to be problematic without that. I'm also going to lose an Urshifu check. I'm going to lose a Water Urshifu check. Now, granted, I didn't bring the Moltres that often into the matchups where I was most concerned about Water-type Urshifu. Like, for example, I didn't like bringing Moltres into Cole. But nevertheless, I'm still losing out on a check there. And then also an anti-Troll Grimmsnarl check. And by the Troll Grimmsnarl, I mean, like, Trick Lightning Tail stuff. So, I'll go ahead and pull up the regional qualifier teams, everybody that made it, and then also there was the list of all the top 6 teams that was published here, published by Nimbasa City Post. I know other outlets also published this, but this was the one I used for reference, so shout outs to you guys for putting this up. This was really cool, very helpful for me. One of the things that I noticed, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, but I thought the teams that were coming from Europe were significantly stronger than every other region. I thought that NA was like meh. I thought Latam was meh. I thought Oceania was really weird. I didn't understand why there was hard Trick Room. That seems like it was like, is this VGC 2020 again with Hatterene and DD stuff? But I think it ended up doing a little bit better in the tournament. So I actually don't remember how well Ben did in global finals, but that's neither here nor there. Darcy was DQ'd. That sucked hard. He ended up getting the boot because he had his birthday wrong in something, and so TBCI disqualified him. That really sucked. I thought that was completely unfair. Purely from a totally selfish perspective, I didn't want to play against this team, but it was. I thought it was complete and utter baloney that he ended up getting DQ'd. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. One of the things that I thought was most important, you see a lot of Landorus. You see a lot of Registeel as well. There's so many Registeel that made it through. You see Felipe made it through. Kevin Salvato made it through with these using the exact same team. Fevzi made it through with this team, which also cut with Marcus. Marcus used this team, and then also another one of the Germans used it. Feist also used it. Fevzi, Feist, and Marcus also used these, and they all placed really well. So I expected this to be a very popular core I expected that to be one of the teams to beat. That seemed to be the strongest team to me. And then also what Leonardo was running, basically what I'm running. Another important thing about that is one of the, if you'll notice, Arasu Amadi was basically using this team but with Blastoise on it. And with how popular Blastoise was on the Germans teams, Blastoise really stood out to me as a potential option to replace Moltres. Not really because of any particular, there wasn't anything that stood out to me as like, okay, yeah, Blastoise makes a lot of sense here, but by usage, it seemed like it was growing in popularity and something to consider. I also watched a little bit of Fevzy's games on YouTube. He had a laddering session from Battlespot that he uploaded, which I thought was really strange. He uploaded it between Players' Cup, the Swiss rounds and Top Cut. I thought that was really strange that he did that, but it wasn't with his final version of the team. He had a stack attack on that version, but with the Registeel version, I didn't think it would be playing that much differently. And I saw how effective Blastoise was in that matchup. It was a little bit. It wasn't exactly playing how I thought it would. I asked Jamie Boyd for some advice on how to play Blastoise as well. He basically gave me similar advice to how I saw the Germans playing with it. With Arash also using it here, I thought this was pretty good. I also talked with BK, the player who I originally got inspiration from in order to use this team in the first place, and he thought that that Blastoise over Moltres would work especially well with Clefairy. He thought that would be potentially even better than what Arash used with the Grimmsnarl variant. So, all those things together, I talked with some other friends as well. I talked with Dog, I talked with a couple KC area locals, Crawl Shots, and Ace Nowak. I talked about Filler Slats. Couldn't really think of anything else that would be better than Blastoise in that particular situation. I thought about Venusaur. Venusaur seemed really cool because it's really good versus Fire, Water, Grass stuff. It's really good versus Urshifu. That's something that's really important. It's great versus Urshifu. It's great versus Lando out of Max. You can Sleep Power to Lando as well. But I don't have Sun. And I don't have anything that can even set a Max Flare. So I would never get Chlorophyll. So I would be abilityless. And Clefairy, Venusaur didn't seem that potent. It didn't seem that particularly strong. I didn't know what it would really add for me. And most importantly was bad versus Lando. And I thought Lando was going to be the most important matchup to consider. Ace Nowak also suggested to use AV Dragapult with Dive. I thought that was a really cool idea because it just obliterates Coal with Clefairy. Coal becomes super free. And then also it's still good versus Fire, Water, Grass stuff. And it's great versus like Urshifu. But with an AV Dragapult, I'm not running Life Orb. I feel like I would need Life Orb in order to justify Dragapult. Like, Clef Dragapult would be cool, but I think I need Life Orb for that. So, in the end, I couldn't justify going with Dragapult either. So, I decided to go with Blastoise. And so, let's finally go ahead and get looking into Blastoise. And I'll talk about it first, because this is the only new Pokemon. So, Blastoise, again, its big pros are that it's a solid bring into Lando. I also think that G-Max ship moves are the best G-Max effects in the game. I think Landorus' Max Airstream is the strongest regular Max move, and I think the G-Max chip moves are the strongest G-Max moves in the game. So I think it's good like Max Airstream, G-Max chip moves, and then like everything else. I think those are by far the best moves that you have available to you. Blastoise is really strong, especially with Registeel, so you could do like Blastoise Registeel stuff, and they could defeat the fire and ground types that Registeel didn't like facing against. You'd be able to max water the Lando, things like that. That was more of a Theorymon thing, though, than actually how it came up. It was also another coal check. That was another nice thing about Blastoise. It was another cool check, a little bit more reliable. Clefairy, Blastoise into coal stuff is really nice. It basically forces them out of using their coal mode, and that felt really nice. Although, to be fair, the only Colossal that made it through was Roxanne. And I knew Roxanne was running Wolf's team, and definitely would not be changing that because he's been running this team for like forever. So I didn't think Roxanne was going to be changing anything there. So the matchup against Life Orb Pult stuff wasn't as important, but I figured like if somebody else was bringing coal, like maybe one of the Latin American players or one of the Australian players, they are going to be bringing the Life Orb variant that like what Marco Fiero used, or like what Sohabe used. So Blastoise was cool there. I liked Yawn. I didn't want to do like Shell Smash stuff with Clefairy. I didn't think that would actually ever work versus Regieleki stuff. My team is not like, I've got a Lando, but it's not especially strong versus Regieleki. And in fact, I think it's really interesting. So the advantage of Moltres is Regieleki doesn't really want to Thunderbolt it very often, especially with Friend Guard support. So it's probably gonna if it doesn't want to Electro Web either, that's that's good. But without Moltres, they feel a lot more free to lead their Eleki and try to use electric type attacks against my team, because the only resist that I have is Lando, which is obviously immune. But Blastoise means that they have a much freer attack, whereas Moltres, they would be more hesitant of doing an attack into it because I have the weakness policy, and if they hit me with a weak electric type attack while I go for the Dynamax, they're going to be put far behind. But Blastoise didn't have that advantage. I thought about running weakness policy on Blastoise rather than Wakanberry, but I figured that would just never actually come up in Players' Cup. I felt like that would be okay on a ladder where my opponents don't know my item, but in Players' Cup I felt like that would not be very consistent. It just means that my opponent won't Rillaboom attack me while I'm maxed, and that didn't end up being, like, that's not a super huge deal because Woodhammer just knocks out Blastoise, so yeah. Blastoise also has a number of notable cons, so the biggest advantage by far is that it's great versus Lando, and I think G-Max chip moves are broken. So those are the really good things about it. But it is not good out of Max. It is a terrible Pokemon out of Max. Moltres is a great Pokemon out of Max. You can Dasty Plot, you can Fiery Wrap stuff. It's great because you have a consistent spread move. This thing's, you have to have Hydro Cannon, you need the extra damage on the Max move. If you run Blizzard, then you literally are just useless out of Max, besides Yawn. Yawn is good out of Max, but it's slow, and you don't really want to Yawn if you're planning on maxing this thing, so if you're going to Yawn loop people, I mean, it's meh. I didn't want Shell Smash on this because I didn't think I could actually get it set up, and I wanted to run Blastoise a little bit bulkier. I wanted it to be a little bit more of a traditional Blastoise. But another downside of it, by far, I think one of the biggest downsides to Blastoise is that I didn't have a Rillaboom on the team. And Rillaboom, I think, probably needs to come with Blastoise. Because Rillaboom is really, really good against water types. And that's the only thing that G-Max Chip Mews are immune to. So, G-Max Chip with Rillaboom on your side is great, because then you pressure the Tapu Fini, the water type Urshifu, that would be immune to that chip damage, and you're able to pressure them with heavy damage with priority Grassy Glide. And then Blastoise is able to, in turn, check the Lando and check the Incin that would be pressuring Rillaboom. Rillaboom was also really good versus Regieleki, which is one of Blastoise's worst matchups. Wakanberry helps with it to a degree, but yeah, I think Rillaboom pairs so well with Blastoise, and not having it made Blastoise less effective than what it could have been. But I didn't want to change anything else on my team. My team, I really like these 5. I didn't want to change these 5. It was just the Moltres slot and figuring out what would fit best in that slot. As far as EVs go, my Blastoise is able to live pretty much all the Regieleki attacks. Spectrier can't KO me at full with Wakan out of Max, which I didn't actually think would come up, but it's interesting. More importantly, a Helping Hand Max Rising Voltage with Regieleki, even with Life Orb, won't kill me in Max, and that's also without Friend Guard, so my Blastoise will be able to take a Regieleki attack in Max, which means that they can't just Max to one-shot me, which is nice. Jolly Airstream from Life Orb Landorus won't kill Blastoise out of Max, which means, more importantly, that during Max, it won't 2-hit KO me, which is important because versus Lando, they'll often Max Quake Blastoise. That's a pretty common thing they'll do, so that way they can take their attacks better. But then they won't be able to knock me out in 2 hits. So that's important that I be able to take those 2 attacks. And then I have a lot of offense, so that way Blastoise can damage effectively Pokemon like Incineroar. You're going to be able to knock out pretty much every Incineroar that's relevant with G-Max Cannonade plus the Water-type chip damage. You won't just knock them out straight up, you'll have to take the chip damage. In order to knock them out reliably, you need to put a Wave Instance on your Blastoise, but I wanted the Wakanberry because not only for Regieleki, but also for random electric attacks, like for example from P2, from Thundurus, things like that, just to weaken the overall damage output. And then I also have some speed on Blastoise just to make sure that I can outspeed the Urshifu at +1. with 110. You need that, otherwise you would speed tie, because 109 times 1.5 is only 163, which speed ties the Urshifu. So you need to have 110. Not like that would come up too often, because it would mean that Lando is max flying beside Blastoise. It was actually a lot more common for Regieleki to lower the speed, so I would like Electro Whip and then Ice Beam, or Max Cannonade or something like that. But still, I felt that it was important to have a little bit of speed in there too. So I've got a little bit of bulk, a little bit of speed, mostly special attack. Pretty well balanced spread overall. The rest of my team, if you're familiar with my regional team builder, was just barely tweaks. I just moved some EVs around to better fit my goals and what I expected in the qualifiers, or what I expected in global finals from the qualifiers. So one of the first things that you'll see is I have a Regieleki with almost no speed investment. I really liked slow Regieleki. I really liked the additional bulk that I got out of it. So I just, but it was actually, I felt kind of stupid. Originally, I had like 36 EVs in defense. I had 36 because Lyokos was running a Regieleki that was like Life Orb with Clefairy, and it had 28 EVs in speed. But nobody's using that. I didn't expect anybody to, like, this is nowhere in the global finals. Like, I don't think anybody was using it. Actually, never mind. I guess this guy was from Australia. But I didn't think anybody who had made it to global finals would actually use it, and nobody did. So I was fine with being the slower Regieleki. I was already content with that because I was running like 36 speed EVs, and so I'm like, I don't need these extra EVs. I'm just going to slap them in bulk. They don't do anything in particular. They just make my goals that I already had better. Like, I take Grassy Glide ever so slightly better. Like, I'll take Grassy Glide plus Hail damage a little bit more reliably, and that can happen because Blastoise can set Hail. Things like that. I have a little bit of Spadef just because I didn't need the extra bulk in defense. I don't know. It was just basically I was dropping some speed and I was optimizing with respect to the bulk. So an important thing, you might ask, well, why are you investing so much in defense and special defense? Why didn't you go in HP first? That's because Regieleki has higher defense, or higher HP than defense and special defense, and so you will tend to have more reward from investing in your defenses first. And that's what I did here. So I've got quite a lot of bulk in defense and HP, but if I had done it the other way around, if I had done like this, then it would have been a lot less efficient. I would have taken attacks a lot worse. But that's kind of covered in my regional team builder video. Spectrier was another very simple change. Originally, I was running max speed on Spectrier. I was running this spread, something like this. But I didn't expect max speed Spectrier to come up. We do still see some Spectrier. Leonardo was still using his Spectrier, but I think we were the only two. No, yeah, Israel was also using it. But Israel was also using a support Spectrier. So that meant the speed tie was a lot less relevant. Originally, I had max speed because I wasn't sure how fast other support Spectrier were running. But since then, I had seen what other Spectrier were out there. Most of them were running something like this. They were running close to like 180. So they were fairly fast. Some of them were even slower than this. And so I felt that 220 speed was perfectly fine. That still puts me faster than Adamant Dragapult in case I have to play Marco Fierro style team again. Because then I can outspeed the Dragapult and Will-O-Wisp it, or go for a max Shadow Ball into it, things like that. I'm able to do that a little bit more quickly. And I expect it to be faster than the other Spectrier that I played against, so that wasn't a huge deal. And the extra defense is nice because it improves my Glastrier max Ice Roll. So before, a Glastrier running 196 attack with a boosting nature would knock out my Spectrier 25% of the time, which was pretty bad. So the addition of this extra defense makes sure that that will never knock me out. And even at max attack, Glastrier would only knock me out, I think only like 3/16 of the time. So still pretty good odds that I'd be able to survive that attack. I didn't end up needing the extra speed. I didn't think I needed to win a speed tie, because if I was playing against another person who was using timid Life Orb Spectrier, then I would just beat them by using Regieleki and like Electro One them or something. That sort of Spectrier has super dropped off, so I didn't expect that to really come up. And if they're running support Spectrier, they only have a little bit of investment like that, so we both have each other's Shadow Ball, so it's not as important to be able to get off the Snarl first. So that was Spectrier. For Clefairy, I also adjusted its spread a little bit along with Landorus. Clefairy had, originally, it had like 204 HP and 52 like this. It was running like this. And then Lando had to have a lot of speed def because, as you'll recall, one of my primary goals with the Clefairy and Landorus was so that way I could lead them together into Porygon 2. And if I did that, then that would guarantee the Porygon 2 gets a download attack boost. And that was a key part of my matchup for how I played things. I wanted to see if I could optimize that a little bit further. In the regional finals, I didn't feel like I could justify switching my EVs around, but I felt a little bit more confident here. So originally Clefairy was EV'd to survive a max attack Glastriers, max heavy slam, 15/16 of the time. And so I just decided, okay, I'm just going to cut that back by 1. I'm going to cut that back to 14/16 or 7/8 of the time. So I still survive that attack most of the time. And that gives me a little bit more special defense. I don't really need a special defense on Clefairy. What I just wanted to do was I wanted to increase Clefairy's special defense so that way Landorus could decrease its special defense investment so I could, as a result, run more in attack. That's what I wanted to do with this. So it was just, like I said, a minor optimization. This is still 31 attack. That's just so I'm being weird with the team builder. I still survive all the other relevant physical threats guaranteed. Like I'll survive Landorus's max attack adamant, life orb, max hairstream. I'll survive that. I'll survive a Rillaboom's wood hammer in terrain if they're holding Rose Incense. I'll survive that. So Clefairy still survives all the attacks that I need it to do, and it just lets Landorus get a little bit more attack. Now there wasn't anything strictly speaking that I needed out of Landorus having more attack, but I didn't need the special defense, so dropping that was good for that. Now I could have dropped the more special defense I dropped for attack, the better it would have been. I would have gotten like even more attack here. It's great. Like if I could do like this, awesome, epic. But that isn't reasonable while maintaining Clefairy's physical defense goals. I wanted to make sure that I survived Lando's max airstream 100% of the time. That's something I was non-negotiable. I was not going to let that be a 15/16s. So I ended up just going with this, which is just a little bit more offense compared to my regional spread. My regional spread had 148, and my this spread had 164. Now, I think probably one of the things I should have looked at a little bit more was actually considering making my Landorus Jolly, because one of the reasons I was adding Blastoise is because I felt the matchup into Landorus was not as good as it could be, and having the faster Landorus in the mirror is incredibly important. However, again, I was going to run into the same problems that I discussed in my regionals team builder video, which was I wouldn't be able to run my extra bulk, which means I can't do things like survive opposing Landorus's +1 max airstream, and have enough to have a life orb recoil hit left over. I wouldn't be able to hit my download goal if I ran something like this. So if I ran something like this, then it wouldn't work. And so I would either have to drop a lot of attack, or I'd have to run like this much attack, but I'd have to drop a lot of speed. This is actually similar to what I'm pretty sure that, I don't know if Leonardo used this, but BK did when we were talking about this. He ran enough speed like this in order to be able to outspeed Togekiss, or maybe it was this. I think it might be this. This outspeeds Togekiss at like timid max speed Togekiss, and so you outspeed most everything else. But I wasn't really sure. I wasn't confident enough that people weren't just going to be running Jolly max speed Lando, so I didn't feel like I could justify doing this when I would still probably be the slower Lando in those Jolly Lando versus Lando situations. So I decided I'm just going to stick with Adamant, stick with what I know, and cut back to something like this. So this was good for me. I was happy with this. And then finally, Registeel didn't change at all. Registeel also I probably might have considered. This was one of the ones I was really torn on. I really considered adding more speed to Registeel. And from watching other Registeel from Europe, and especially during the regional qualifiers, and then also during global qualifiers, I think the extra speed on Registeel would have been better than keeping what I currently had. The extra speed on Registeel lets you do things like potentially, like here, I think, if I recall correctly, the Registeel one of the Registeels in Europe that I saw outsped an Incineroar. And that was huge for them in the matchup because they were able to Iron Defense before the Incineroar was able to taunt them. And by having extra speed, you can also do similar goals like we had talked about in the regional finals video, or the regional team builder video, where a Registeel at +2 speed will be able to outspeed Urshifu, and that's a really nice goal to have. So the additional speed would have been something I think a little bit more in consideration, especially since my quote offensive goals with this were kind of sketchy. I mostly just picked my speed and then I chose my defenses from there. But if I had invested more in speed first, I probably could have got away with less defensive investment. I liked this spread though. I didn't have any problems with this spread. And so I didn't end up testing whether or not more speed on Registeel would have been better. But I think if I had a little bit more time to practice, I may have at least tried it out to see whether or not I would have liked it. But yeah, that's the team. Overall, a really important question I think to ask is, do I regret my decision with choosing Moltres rather than Blastoise? Or the other way around, choosing Blastoise rather than Moltres. And the answer is no. Moltres would not have won me either of my games in Players' Cup, and I think Blastoise was fine. In both games in my Players' Cup, I lost because of opposing Life Orb Max Lando. And it's kind of sad that when you add a Pokemon specifically to beat that it doesn't end up working out. But yeah, I don't regret the Blastoise choice. There are a few plays, like, here and there in my losses, I'm just like, oh, I wish I had done this a little bit better. But overall, I just felt my opponents, like, I felt it was good games of Pokemon. I don't think Blastoise was a bad pick. And in practice, Blastoise did fine. It wasn't stellar, but it was better than Moltres. It was better than what Moltres was. It wasn't stellar, though. If I had more time, perhaps I could have explored with more options, but regardless, I liked Blastoise. I thought Blastoise was okay. It's definitely not the secret threat that everybody was talking about. Like, I know a whole bunch of people, especially TPCI, they were really hyping up Blastoise. The casters were, and then also in their articles, they're like, oh, G-Max, Blastoise is a secret weapon. It's gonna win Players' Cup. But I don't think Blastoise is really the secret weapon. I think even if you watch the Germans play with Blastoise, Blastoise is probably one of the least effective members of their team. But I think Blastoise is cool. It's a cool Pokemon. I like this set on it. I wouldn't have liked Shell Smash. Shell Smash would have forced me to do Clefairy, Blastoise stuff, and then you just instantly lose Regieleki, and you can't do that versus any Regieleki teams. And you can't do it versus any teams with Rillaboom. And by the way, Rillaboom and Regieleki are popular and good Pokemon. So, yeah. I think that should wrap it about up. I don't need to have this take too long because the team is so similar to my regional finals. If you're interested in more specific details, you can check the regional finals video out for those details. But otherwise, I think that should do it. I hope you guys enjoy my Global Finals games. I do get to showcase one of my matches that was not streamed, and so that's exciting. In the regional finals Top Cut, all 3 of my games were streamed. And so I get to showcase some unique content to you guys, which is, I think, an advantage of uploading these matches independently from TPCI as well. So thanks for watching. Enjoy my games.